Chapter 8. As she clung to the thick fur on Grayson's back, Katie tried to keep her eyes on the horizon, tried to keep the anxiety at bay, clawing at her. She was safe now with Grayson, the one Lupin who'd promised to be there for her day or night. But he seemed as foreign and dangerous as the world surrounding them. She'd never seen a wolf this large, one who looked like he could swallow an ordinary wolf whole, and then have another for dessert. The air in the Dark Kingdom smelled more pure, free of pollutants caused by skins. The sky was a startling blue, no smog or haze, and that made scent clear as well. She knew Grayson could detect the fear oozing from her pores, much as she tried to suppress it. Looking over her shoulder, she could see the two forms on horseback or whatever they rode. Before they had been specks on the horizon, now they were more discernible. The ash wasteland of the blasted zone seemed endless. She hoped they would soon find the unicorn bones and a way home. But instead of going in the direction Jaden had told them, Grayson suddenly hooked a right, heading for the jagged mountain range looming over the desert. Holding on to him, bouncing up and down, she wanted to protest he was going the wrong way. I have to get you to a safe place, Katie. I can never outrun night riders, even though they are slower during daylight. Blinking, she realized he'd spoken directly into her mind, just as he had back at the Mitchell Ranch during the wrangling. You said they were slower than Darius. I was trying to calm you, darling. You were scared enough. Don't worry. I can handle a night rider. I eat them for breakfast. Long as you don't eat me, she muttered, wincing as he leapt over a rock. And she landed hard on her bottom. Grayson turned his head, showing a toothy grin. Oh, I'd love to eat you for breakfast, darling, and dessert and dinner. And you would love every single sheet-grabbing moment. She didn't even know how to respond to that. And then he was running even faster, his energy seemingly boundless. Katie had seen Grayson on a horse, had seen him lifting bales of hay as if they were light as paper, and knew he was muscled. But this wolf strength astounded her. The ash thinned here, leaving more yellow, hard-packed sand which made traction easier. Clumps of stubby trees peppered the ground as they drew closer to the mountains. At a thick gathering of green trees with branches stretching out like welcoming arms, Grayson stopped. She climbed off his back, grateful for the rest. Katie unpacked the canteen and drank deeply, gesturing to Grayson. He nodded. And then he shifted back into a man, and conjured clothing. He took the canteen and sipped, his gaze glued to the wasteland they'd left behind. Be careful, he said softly. These lands present all kinds of hidden dangers, even small ones. She watched a black insect crawl up a nearby tree branch, such as a bright orange bird swooped down to eat the bug. Suddenly the insect reared back on its legs and spat at the bird. Shrieking, the bird flew off. Insects that spit acid into the eyes of their attackers for one, he said, screwing the cap on the canteen. If you leave most of the living creatures here in the blasted zone alone, they leave you alone. Then he set down the canteen and pointed. Except for the night riders. They intrude upon everyone and everything. Grayson stared into the distance, the concentration on his handsome face worrying her. He knew this world and its dangers, it seemed, and she was on foreign land. Why did we stop? I thought Jaden said the unicorn bones are quite a distance away. They are, but until we find out who wanted you kidnapped and I deal with that threat, you'll never be safe in your world. Grayson pulled a pair of binoculars out of his backpack and scanned the horizon. This patch of thin trees with the sharp, dull brown boulders and the yellow sand didn't seem like a terrific hiding place, or a place to make a stand against dangerous bounty hunters. Those night riders are gaining on us. They plan to take me back, but I'll die here before I return to that place. I'm a wolf too, she said, gathering all her courage. If a fight was forthcoming, she had fangs and sharp teeth. An amused smile touched Grayson's mouth as he lowered the glasses and glanced at her. That's my girl. But you focus on finding a place to hide, Katie. These fae hunting you aren't like those in the skin world, and your powers aren't as developed yet. She sipped from the canteen again, and then set it down, trying to control her shaking hand and not knowing if her nervousness stemmed from the dust cloud of the riders that grew closer, or Grayson's odd words. What do you mean, yet? I'm a mature Lupin. Grayson placed the binoculars back in the pack. I'll tell you, Katie, but now is not the time. I want you to go back behind those trees and stay there. I'm Going to take them. 1 against 2 isn't a fair fight. I can help. Resolve glittered in his blue eyes. And then his irises flashed purple. Not. These Fae. Letting her powers surge, she felt her fangs descend. I'm a strong Lupin. Grayson. Don't underestimate me. That amused grin returned. I'm not. Ever seen a Fae with talons sharp as butcher knives, Katie? A Fae who can toss a fireball and incinerate you? Not. Your skin, that's painful enough. These energy balls fry you from the inside out. It's not a nice way to die. Mouth dry, she stared at Grayson. And you're going to fight them by yourself? What if you die that way? Losing him was something she'd never contemplated before. Not like this. Not. Ever. Grayson always seemed larger than life, as if he'd always be there. The thought of him dying made her heart ache. It was more than the thought of losing a dear friend, the only one who truly seemed to understand her. It was like losing a mate. Pushing the thought out of her mind, she looked helplessly at the dust cloud. Growing closer, indicating the approach of the riders. Grayson's expression turned cynical. Relax. I'm not going to die that way. And if I do, I'll make damn sure you find your way home first. He thought she was upset because she might lose her ride home. Not that she couldn't bear him dying. No time to counter that, though, for he shoved her toward the clump of thicker trees. Grayson pointed to a narrow cleft in the nearby mountain range. Stay. There, stay down, and if I get killed, head for that passage. But you can't face them alone. I'll help you, Grayson. I don't want anything to happen to you. His cynical expression softened. Katie, I can take them on by myself. I have powers in this world you don't know of. Go through the passage. That will lead you to Wolf Haven. Stay in skin form and you'll be safe enough until one of our kind finds you. Remain on the path through the forest whatever you do. Never shift into wolf in the feral forest. Feral forest? What's in there? Trees with teeth. He did not smile at her joke. Do as I say. A Lupin will find you eventually and give you safe passage back to your world. Your world. Not our world. She didn't want to hide, but Grayson kept herding her toward the trees. She found the largest one and crouched down behind it to wait. In this world her eyesight was much sharper. Now she could see the dust cloud draw closer and see the faces of their enemies. Horror made her knees weak. Katie hugged the tree, ready to collapse. Grayson had not exaggerated about the night riders. The Fae she'd seen once had pointed ears, pale skin, wide smiles, and were lean and tall with pale silver hair. They looked like Jaden, only kinder and less cynical. Jaden had a lethal air about him, and his magic pulsed dark. These Fae made Jaden look as harmless as a child's bouncy ball. The two night riders had pointed faces with burning yellow eyes, 2 holes for noses, and ears that were not only pointed, but serrated like the edge of pinking shears. Their hair was pale, long, and they snarled. The creatures they rode, not horses but centaurs with gnashing teeth and wild eyes, their hooves coming down hard on the ash and sand. The stench emanating from them made her eyes water. It was a mixture of rotting trash and sulfur. Looking at them offered a glimpse into hell. The centaurs alone could kill Grayson. This was going down badly, and if Grayson died, Katie knew her entire world would collapse. Chapter 9. Katie didn't know why someone at the brothel wanted her as a prisoner. She had no idea why this place seemed slightly familiar. But she did know one thing. Grayson was not going to die at the hands of these night riders. Not today. Not as long as she was here. The riders galloped into the glade and leapt off the centaurs, who pawed the air and whinnied. Not the whinny of horses she'd ridden countless times in the pasture, but a terrible ripping sound that screeched in her eardrums. Katie whimpered and clapped her hands over her ears and felt blood flow. Blood flowed from Grayson's ears as well, but he did not whine. He faced them, tall and courageous. Grayson's smile sent a chill snaking down her spine, and suddenly she was afraid. Not of the Fae nor the centaurs. Give us the girl who escaped, said one Fae, and his voice sounded like nails raking over her eardrums. Go fuck yourselves. She's mine, and I never let go of what is mine, Grayson told him. Katie reeled backward. Grayson's quiet statement definitely put a claim on her. She didn't know what to think of that. You will regret this, Wolf, the other Fae said. Cold, emotionless, they withdrew silver swords from sheaths at belts around their waist. Grayson flung out his hands. Not claws but 5-inch talons emerged from his fingertips. Before the first Fae could raise his sword, Grayson struck, slashing at the Fae's arm. Screamed and nearly dropped the sword. Katie stared, feeling as if she'd been submerged into a movie. Everything seemed to move slowly. And then the centaurs rushed forward, screaming and lashing out with their hooves. One struck Grayson in his stomach and he winced. Grayson shifted into wolf, a beast even larger than the one she'd ridden. Across the sands, the talons on his paws were like butcher knives in his teeth. Dear goddess, he had a mouth filled with teeth like Ninya had as the Thanak. Blue and green lightning flashed and thunder crackled, sounding as if the skies themselves had split open. The fury of the battle roused her own anger. As Grayson fought with the two centaurs and the Fae, fighting not for his life but hers. Mouth dry, she stared at Grayson, snarling and snapping at the Fae, who screamed as Grayson tore his throat out. Every lupin instinct surged, her wolf struggling to be free and not hide like a coward. She was no weak female, cowering behind greenery and having a male defend her. Katie threw back her head and howled, the sound making the tree before her split in half. Not fighting the instinct, she rode with it and felt her magic pour forth. Bones lengthened and she howled with the shift. Talons grew from her hands and feet, and she felt stronger than ever before. Rushing into the fight, she leapt over a boulder and attacked the centaur closest to Grayson, which prepared to trample him. Katie went for the throat. She tore and snapped and felt warm blood gush over her muzzle. The centaur screamed and then gasped, gurgling. Seeing the other die, the second centaur turned and ran, leaving Grayson to fight the Fae. The Fae stabbed him but he did not fall. Each wound seemed only to enrage him. Further, diving beneath their jabbing swords, he tore at the Fae's legs. One staggered back and summoned a bright ball of orange flame in his hands. The energy balls Grayson had mentioned. Immobilized by fear, she could not move. Katie started to scream a warning, but before she could barely blink, Grayson turned. He cut off the hand of the Fae, holding the energy ball. Before it could move, he slashed at its throat. Never had she seen such swift speed. Too stunned by what had happened, she backed off as Grayson killed the remaining rider. Then he raced after the burning Fae, killed him as well, and caught up with the centaur. She closed her eyes, trembling badly. When she opened them, she was back in skin. Katie conjured clothing, too stricken to think straight. Muzzle bloodied, Grayson loped into the clearing, his blue eyes scanning the carnage. The centaur she had killed lay on the sand, black blood pooling by his head. Grayson went to the corpse, sniffed it, and then lifted his hind leg. It would have been funny had she not been so terrified. He loped over to her and regarded her with those cool blue eyes. In lupin form, Grayson was large as a small pony. Black as ink, the wolf outweighed her. Alpha by at least 100 pounds. She stepped back, afraid of the terrible power radiating from her friend. Crimson dripping from its jaws, the wolf turned to her. Sorrow swam in the ice. Blue eyes. Katie, you fear me. This was the man/lupin who would never hurt her, who risked his own life to find entrance into the Dark Kingdom and find her, bring her safely home. I don't fear you, Grayson. She stared at her hands, which had grown talons that had ripped out the throat of the centaur. I fear what I am. What am I? Don't. His voice thickened. There is nothing to fear, Katie. You're different. And here, those differences are lifesavers. What am I? I've never attacked another living being before, except to hunt prey. And yet the rage within me, seeing them attack you, I felt nothing but bloodlust. And you? This wasn't like killing prey to eat. She had downed a creature twice her size and ripped him apart like a feral wolf. Katie knew what happened to feral wolves. In the end, the Silver Wizard, the judge and guardian of lupins, usually had to dispose of them quickly. It was a merciful death. Wolves, without the discipline of pack, lupins that did as they pleased and killed viciously, were dangerous in the skin world. Feral lupins didn't care about the rules governing them. They risked exposure and letting out the secret that others roamed the earth alongside the human race. Humans must never know that werewolves existed. Grayson shifted back to skin and clothed himself in jeans and a black t-shirt. Familiar clothing. She'd seen him wear this several times around the ranch when he helped wranglers round up stray cattle or fix a fence post bordering his ranch and her packs. The clothing grounded her. Perhaps he meant it to do exactly that. Grayson held out his hands. Strong, calloused, the palms of a rancher. Not a feral wolf, a creature that could bring down 2 nightmarish fae and a centaur. That made a Clydesdale look like a pony. Katie, come here. Immobilized, she could not move. This place was too strange, too frightening. She had become frightening as well. His voice softened to a husky plea. Please. It's me, Grayson. Your friend. He kept speaking in a soothing tone, as if she were a wild animal to tame to. His hand. Katie didn't want to approach him. Her heart pounded like a drum and sweat dampened her hands. The fear became a live, writhing beast inside her. And then she looked into his eyes and saw the haunted shadows there. Whatever this thing had become, this thing that was her, he suffered from it as well. She went to him and he did not move, only when she flattened her palm against his deep chest to feel the steady rhythm of his heart and know it was Grayson. Did his arms wrap around her? For a minute they remained motionless, the stench of blood and death and evil swirling around them. Grayson finally rested his chin atop her head. Katie, my Katie, you are not a monster. I will explain everything, but right now is not the place. At dusk, creatures of the night roam the blasted zone to search for easy prey. The blood will draw them close. But he had changed. No longer Grayson, the guarded but approachable cowboy. Even his manner of speaking had changed and become more formal, less folksy. Less Grayson. What was he? She pulled away and stared at her hands, her now normal hands. And what did that make her? He brushed a lock of damp hair from her face. We have to go, sweetheart. Have to get you someplace safe. Taking her hand, he picked up the pack and tugged her toward the narrow passage cutting through the thick mountains. It looked nearly impassable. She had no choice but to follow. In this foreign, dangerous land she was lost. Grayson nodded. Go first. It looks as if it will close in on you, but that's an illusion created to keep out other species. I hope so. I don't relish the idea of being trapped in here if more of those things chase us. He pulled her close and kissed her cheek, a mere brush of his lips, but the contact made her toes curl. Remember, if you get scared, I am behind you all the way. You are Lupin. Strong. You can do this. They walked through the passage, Katie in front of Grayson. A chill raced down her spine as the thick, tall rock seemed to compress her. I am Lupin. I am strong. I can do this. Finally the strip of daylight became wider, and the passage opened. She saw nothing but a thick covering of greenery. Touch it. It will recognize your DNA as Lupin and it'll let you through, Grayson told her. Katie touched the hedge, marveling as the bushes rustled and then parted. She stepped onto a pathway strewn with thick pine needles and branches. Trees flanked the pathway, thick, dark and menacing. It was a forest, and her wolf normally adored forests. But at this forest, her wolf whined, cringed and wanted to turn back. Run the other way. The scent of danger tainted the air like old blood. Grayson stepped through the hedges, adjusting the pack on his broad shoulders. He jerked his head toward a ribbon-like path snaking through the woods. Stay close behind me and do not look back. Stay on the path. Behind her, she heard the hedges close. Too late to run in the other direction. She had to push forward. They walked only for a few minutes, but her stomach clenched in knots and gooseflesh sprang out on her bare arms. Go back, her mind screamed. This was not the forest of her beloved Montana ranch. The trees were tall and thick, their roots snaking across the floor, ready to trip the unwary. Rocks pebbled the floor, and the ground was riddled with undergrowth that held no sounds of wildlife or even insects. The trees were so thick, insufficient. Sunshine spilled downward, making the woods spooky. Decaying vegetation and pieces of fallen tree branches littered the forest floor like old bones. Wind whipped through the treetops, moaning like a banshee, and then it stopped. The silence became so jarring, it felt as if she stood in a valley of emptiness. There was no sound but for her own frantic breaths. Katie scanned her surroundings, alarmed at how her skin crawled with apprehension. The trees seemed menacing, with long branches stretching out like malevolent hands. Purple circles ringed the trees like a thick, ugly fungus. Grayson headed forward until reaching a small stream. She trudged behind Grayson as a sense of foreboding filled her. This land of darkness presented unknown threats. Something deep inside her nudged her to go faster, get out of these woods. They were dangerous. And Grayson, her handsome cowboy friend, had changed into a lupin equally as dangerous. Suddenly Grayson turned right, stepping away from the path. He headed into the bank of ferns farther from the stream. Katie hesitated. He'd been so insistent on following the path. Where are you going? She called out. Shortcut. We're losing daylight. Silence draped the woods but for the sound of their footsteps and her own increasing breaths. Dusk had started to fall, the purple, pink and bright pink. Shadows creeping across the forest floor like living things. You said to stay on the path. It's getting dark and it's faster to hike by the stream, Grayson told her. We need to reach Sanctuary before full dark. What sanctuary? Wolf Haven. What is this place? She felt a chill rush down her spine as if a ghost finger stroked an icy finger down her bare back. This did not seem like any type of sanctuary. I told you before. The feral forest. The pathway narrowed and she picked her way over rocks. Charcoal-colored tree roots snaked over the path, stretching out like fingers as they trudged forward. Green moss-coated rocks provided little traction as she followed Grayson alongside the gurgling water. Her wolf whined, wanting to go home now. Why now that Grayson found her? Did he insist on taking her to this awful place? Can we go back? I need to get home. Goddess, she sounded whiny, but Katie didn't care. All her nerves were jangled and she couldn't help feeling she'd been here before. Ancient cries of pain and anguish echoed in her mind like memories. Katie rubbed her temples. She knew this place and it wasn't her imagination. She had been here before and had no memory of it until now. Grayson glanced upward. A thin fog crept over the stream, droplets of mist creeping toward them like smoke. Stay with me, he repeated. Don't think about anything, just focus on putting one foot in front of the other. Why can't we shift? We'll get there faster. Grayson stopped, looked at her, his blue eyes cold as ice. Whatever you do, never shift into wolf in the feral forest. Do as I say. He turned back and kept going. She followed, fear coagulating in her stomach. With worry, Grayson had turned into an arrogant lupin, no consideration for her feelings or that she might be. A blood-curdling scream pierced the air. Katie jumped. Don't look back, Grayson ordered. He couldn't tell her what to do all the time. She could not resist. Maybe someone was in trouble. Katie turned her head. A bone-white skeleton, flesh rotting on its slender frame, hung from the limb of a tree about 5 feet from the water's edge. The mouth opened. Kaadi, it sang out. Turn back. Screaming, she stumbled forward, almost falling into the stream. Grayson caught her, helped her straighten. The skeleton, she gasped, shaking badly. It was your imagination. There's nothing there. But I warned you, do not look back, he snapped. Now follow me and do as I say. We have to get through here before nightfall. Since twilight had already started to fill the forest with grayish light, his words filled her with more anxiety. He picked up the pace and she struggled to follow. The rocks were perilous and slick as oil. One misstep and she'd topple. You can do this, a voice whispered in her mind. The voice sounded like Grayson. She could not be certain. Katie pushed back the fear and focused on Grayson, feeling her wolf rise to the surface. Watching him, she let the beast go, let instinct guide her, not logic. To her surprise, the slippery, moss-coated rocks seemed less hazardous. She leapt from one to the other as he did. It almost seemed as if her wolf knew this way. But how? After 15 minutes, Grayson stopped. The stream diverted to the west. He headed back in the direction of the path. Confused, she followed. Where are you going? You said to follow the stream. Shortcut. He seemed to know where he was going. She had to trust him. Katie followed, and then the ground became more rocky and treacherous. Grayson stopped. Before them yawned a rocky slope that seemed to drop straight into the ground. Green and purple fungus sprouted on the boulders before them. The descent led straight into an ink-black cave. Wind rustled the treetops. Something whispered in the air in a deep voice. Don't go in there. You will never get out. Katie balked. No way was she going in there. Forget it. I'm going back to the stream. If she had to get stuck in the dark, she wanted the safety of water at least. And a place to wait until morning. Grayson shook his head. It will save us 30 minutes. It's a shortcut. Katie, just a few minutes and you'll be in the clear. Right. In the clear for what? For him to strangle her in that suffocating space? Hide her body so no one would ever find it? Horrific images danced in her mind. Dead bodies piled up like firewood. This cave was Grayson's hiding place where he liked to store all his victims. Don't go, Katie, the whispers in the air warned. Katie backed away. No. His expression softened. I've pushed you hard until now. Please do as I say. I'll take my chances with the stream. I would never hurt you. You're safe with me, sweetheart. Grayson came close. Closer still. And then he had his fingers on her upper arms, his touch light. I don't know who you are, she whispered. How do I know you're not the one? Who ordered Charles to kidnap me and bring me here? You could be a demon. Grayson, I saw what you turned into when you fought those riders. His fingers tightened around her arms. Because if I were a demon I would have already killed you and feasted on your flesh. I'm not a demon, Katie. I'm not a banshee or a ghost of a Lupin who never made it out of these woods. I'm Grayson. You're Grayson. She squeezed her eyes shut, not knowing if she could believe him or if she was better off on her own. This forest is filled with tricks and lies to trip you up, Katie. Every sadness, fear and doubt you've held becomes larger, more haunting. It will kill you faster than any other creature in the Dark Kingdom. It's a test of stamina to see if you are strong enough to survive life here. You must conquer the darkness inside yourself. His mouth flattened. Or you become as lost as the demons and spirits haunting this place, the spirits of Lupins, who surrendered to total darkness and turned evil. The nagging question that kept poking at her like a sore tooth prodded her to finally voice her deepest concern. Did my birth parents die here? Grayson turned away, his jawline taut. We need to push on. Oh goddess, that wasn't good, so not good. Don't even think about them, just follow him, get out of here. Shadows draped the ground, making it difficult to see. Looking up, she saw the darkness begin to descend like fog. Before them was the cave. Behind her, the stream. Grayson stepped back and held out his hand. Trust me. Please. Don't do it, the whispers pleaded. Don't trust him, he's the dangerous one. But she remembered Grayson. All those times they'd been riding together, how he'd always made her smile and laugh, and how protective he'd been of her. He was the only one who came here to the Dark Kingdom to save her, but no one else had. Katie put her hand into his. A great, shuddering sigh of relief fled him. The way down was even more treacherous than the slippery rocks by the stream. They were barely a third of the way down when he turned and swung her into his arms. It felt so familiar, though he'd never done this. A distant thought nagged her. The shadow of a faint memory pulsed, feeling warm and safe in his arms. They reached the cave and he set her down, then looked at her in the gathering purple shadows of dark. Don't be scared. Trust me. Don't listen to the voices either. They will taunt you, try to make you hurt yourself or me. Then he stretched out his arm, and his hand glowed with an eerie white light, as if he held a lantern. What magic is that? She asked, fascinated more than fearful. My magic. She followed him through the inky darkness of the cave. A constant drip, drip, drip of water softly pinging onto the cavern floor to her right. She felt something slimy poke the bare skin of her arm. She shuddered. Voices whispered at her. They killed themselves. Your parents wanted to kill you. They wanted to strangle you and eat your flesh while you slowly died. Katie screamed and clapped her hands over her ears. They did not kill themselves. Stop it, stop it. And then Grayson was there, big, comforting Grayson, holding her tight, rocking her back and forth, the light from his hands illuminating the blackness. It's an illusion, sweetheart. All in your mind. It's okay. Okay. They're dead. They died here. Warm tears streamed down her face. I'll tell you later. Not here. Come on. Two warm hands cupped her cheeks, and the light from his hands felt as comforting as a down blanket. We're almost there, I promise. He was an anchor in a stormy sea. Katie laced her hands around his wrists. Don't leave me. She kissed him and he flinched in surprise. His mouth was warm, firm and felt like heaven in this little part of hell. Needing more, she leaned against him, kissing him harder, and heard him sigh, felt him respond as his heart rate increased. Sensing the restraint within him, she tried to deepen the kiss. He broke it off gently. Not now, Katie. Voice hoarse in the darkness, he quivered beneath her touch, as if he didn't dare touch her further, as if he could lose control. That realization pushed aside the darkness, the nasty voices and the fear. Grayson would not hurt her. He was different, something other, but he was not going to hurt her. He took her hand and led her forward. And then there was a pinprick of light ahead, wonderful, beautiful light. He quickened his pace and then they were outside the cavern. Moonlight. The moon was nearly as bright as the sun, filling the air with lovely silver light. She found herself in a verdant forest, with a crystal-clear stream rippling through a field ripe with lavender wildflowers. A waterfall sparkled with blue, red, and green colors as it spilled down a hillside. This forest wasn't dark and sinister, but welcoming. Her wolf howled with delight. Tiny fairies the size of moths fluttered around the water, skirting the gurgling stream. Iridescent blue, green, citron, and magenta lights glowed around them like lamplight. Owls hooted in the distance and insects hummed. The air was thick with the delicious smells of freshness. Evergreen and her nose twitched. Fresh game. It smelled like her favorite rabbit. Goodness, she hadn't realized how hungry she was. Grayson put his hands on her shoulders. She could feel the tension gone from him, but only slightly. Welcome to Wolf Haven. It's a lupin sanctuary in the Dark Kingdom, where we can live in relative safety. Why relative? He squeezed her shoulders lightly. We are safe from others, especially dark Fae, but we still must live with each other. It isn't an easy thing, Katie. Not like your Mitchell pack. Lupins here are more fierce and savage. Grayson dropped his hands, and as she turned, his expression became shuttered. But he fisted his hands, especially when it comes time to mate. She wondered what he meant by that comment. Ever since the battle with the Night Riders, Grayson seemed wound taut as a coil, and it wasn't from the threat of the Fae or centaurs, but something different and much more primitive. He adjusted the pack on his shoulders. Come on. They set out for a pathway through the forest. The path cut through a thick swath of trees and brush bordering the stream. The fairies flew alongside them, zipping playfully before her, fanning the air with their wings. Are the fairies safe, or do they have teeth and fangs? They're safe. One reason they live here. Those are evergreen fairies. They lack most of the defenses of others in the Dark Kingdom, so they live amongst the lupins in a symbiotic relationship. The fairies keep the water supply fresh, tend to the trees and plants, and in return we provide protection, he told her. After walking through the thick forest for a good mile, she felt ready to collapse from the nerve-wracking fight and her depleted energy. They came upon a small glen surrounded by evergreen and oak trees. In the midst was a wooden cottage. Straight out of a fairy tale, it had sparkling, clear windows and a thick oak door. On the wraparound front porch sat two white rocking chairs. A rug by the door read welcome. Ancient runes were carved into the doorpost. Weariness forgotten, she bounded up the steps, curious to read the runes, but the marks were faded and nearly undecipherable. She turned to Grayson, who trudged up the steps behind her. Is this your home? Your real home? His real home, where he had been born. Grayson nodded. My refuge in the woods. My family built it years ago. No one has lived here for a long time, but someone I know returns to keep it clean. He looked around as if expecting visitors. I marked it with my scent to protect my turf. Something like a dim memory pricked in her mind. Because if you did not, intruders would take it over, claim it for themselves. You must scent mark every 6 months to warn them off. Blinking, he shoved his hands into his jeans pockets. Yup. It made no sense. How could she know anything about this strange new world? I don't understand. It feels. She looked around at the evergreen trees, which turned out not to be evergreens after closer study. They were a mixture of dark green with purple, with thick trunks and sheltering branches. I remember this place as if I've been here in my dreams. How is that possible? He reached over the door and fumbled with an ornate silver key and unlocked the front door. I'll tell you later, after we've settled in, had some chow. Katie wondered what chow was in this world. The cottage's interior was clean, with a sofa, twin armchairs set before a rock fireplace, and bookcases filled with reading material. Over the fireplace mantel hung a silver sword. She turned to Grayson. No rifle. It was hard to imagine Grayson without his rifle, always carried in a leather holder on his horse. Equally odd to see him here, without his black Stetson. His brown hair, cropped short, looked soft to the touch. She longed to run her fingers through. Katie put her hands behind her, aware of the thrumming in her blood indicating That soon she'd come into her heat. Terrific. All she needed to worry about. And now her body was tingling with sexual demands. Blame the kiss in the cavern. It cranked up all her body's needs. Forget the evil and threats. Sex came first. She nearly laughed at that thought. No rifle. No guns in this world. We use ancient weapons forged by the dark Fae. Much more deadly than a rifle. Skin weapons don't function well here. An open door showed a king-size four-poster bed with rough-hewn timbers for a headboard. Katie avoided looking at that room, though her wolf nudged her to take a peek and maybe assess the bed for later use with him. It had to be a very sturdy bed for what her body wanted him to do to her. Flushing, she turned away, but not before she caught Grayson's mouth twitch, as if he read her mind. Food first, he announced. Freezer's fully stocked with game. Won't take long to defrost. She frowned. You have electricity here? Not power in the traditional skin sense. Magic. Using his forefinger, Grayson traced the air. Purple and pink runes danced in the air in the patterns he drew. Magic's all around us, Katie. Just need to know how to harness it. In the kitchen, he showed her the refrigerator/freezer. It was a gray box with a humming motor just like that in the skin world, but it emitted a soft purple light. She ran her hands over it and felt a slight tingle. Grayson showed her a silver line snaking from the box to the wall. This is the outlet, which is rigged to wiring throughout the house, which is fed by the earth beneath the cottage. Long as Wolf Haven exists, we have all the power we'll ever need. In no time, he defrosted 2 steaks and grilled them on the gas range. They ate beneath the light of an antler chandelier that glowed bright yellow. Conversation revolved around their favorite meals, but he told her nothing about this strange new world, nor did he mention the dark forest. Katie finished her steak and sipped from her water glass. Thank you, she said. I appreciate this, Grayson. His ice blue gaze met hers across the dining table. I'll always take care of your needs, Katie. It sounded as if he wanted to address all her needs. Her hormones sighed in agreement. Oh yeah, you can take care of them right on that big bed of yours. Pushing back from the table, she murmured an excuse and went to find the bathroom. When she was finished, she stared at her reflection in the mirror over the sink. Her skin looked more delicate, almost pale, and her eyes were bigger and lashes longer. She almost looked pretty. Was it this place doing this to her? Hard to imagine. Katie joined Grayson outside on the front porch. Insects buzzed in the trees, and an owl hooted nearby. As she sat in the rocker beside his, she could almost imagine they were on his front porch back in Montana, not in some strange other kingdom where centaurs slashed and killed with their hooves. You okay, Katie? He asked. Now that I've had dinner and we're out of that damn cave, I'm much better. Grayson laughed. Enchanted by the sound, she left her rocking chair and climbed into his lap. At first he flinched again, but when she pillowed her head against his chest, he sighed and slid an arm around her. I've dreamed about this, he admitted. You in my arms, and we're just watching the world pass by. He slid his fingers through her hair, rubbing her head, and she made a humming sound deep in her throat like a contented cat. A large predator cat, not a house pet. Feels great, she murmured. You're purring. Thought you were a wolf, not a lil old pussycat, he teased. She bared her fangs at him. I am silly. Think a house cat has these. He wasn't immune to the simmering sexuality between them, for she felt the hardness in his jeans beneath her bottom. Smiling, she sat watching the sunset. Katie marveled at the changing colors. Vibrant, iridescent, and lovely. So unlike this kingdom of darkness and danger. Grayson pointed to the sky. Colors representing all the species hereof. Others. Green for the forest fairies and sprites. Red for fae, blue for lupin, orange for trolls, citron for ogres, and pink and purple for all the others who reside here. Purple for the magic, pink for the earth. So different from her world of skins, where she galloped through the pastures and could easily pretend she was normal, either a skin or a lupin. On Earth, it was easy to blend. Here it presented a real challenge. She had to call upon her unique lupin powers to survive. Her stomach growled, as if she hadn't eaten an entire steak. He watched her, as if gauging her reaction. How do you feel? Truth now. I'm still hungry, she admitted. I don't want to seem ungrateful. Reckon you would still need chow. Fresh, raw meat, not frozen. You're approaching your time, and that uses up a lot of Lupin magic. And in this world, Lupins require more raw meat to fuel their magic. Get up. She did. Grayson stood stretching, and she admired the play of his biceps as they flexed. Is there game nearby? Close enough so we don't have to run far. He held out his hand. She took it, the energy between them arcing in purple and pink streaks. He studied the sparks. Feel that? He asked softly. She nodded. Sexual chemistry. Here it's a living thing, not as subtle as in the skin world. Lupins make their intentions known early on because our instincts run deeper and our urges are fiercer. He drew in a deep breath and tugged her down the porch stairs. Silver moonlight gilded the nearby trees as they shifted into their wolf forms. Gone was the tension she felt seeing his large wolf, which easily outweighed hers by 150 pounds. Instead she felt alive, aware, and very, very female. Grayson led her through the glade into the forest. Her nostrils twitched with the delicious smells of rabbit and deer. Haven indeed, she thought as he caught the scent of a nearby deer, and she followed, stalking the creature. Soon the deer was dead, a merciful, swift death. She held back, letting Grayson eat first. Back on the ranch when she ran with the others in the Mitchell pack, Lupin etiquette demanded the alpha pair and all pregnant females eat first, but here she went on instinct. The male who brought down the kill had his choice. Katie watched Grayson eat his fill of the prey. Then he turned and nudged her toward the deer, urging her to eat. A primitive thrill raced through her. This was living life as wolf, nothing to block her from her instincts. No threat of skins, no worries about getting caught doing something that the pack and Aiden would frown upon. Nothing but pure wildness, nature and her own deep-set instincts guiding her. No wonder Fae like Ninia preferred the Dark Kingdom. Without the restrictions of the earthly world, they could live free and do as they chose. Grayson shifted back to skin and wiped his mouth with the back of one hand. Don't think like that, Katie. Life here isn't all pleasure and fun and games. Can be unpredictable and raw, so raw that if you stay here you could lose yourself forever. Again reading her mind. By now she was accustomed to the intrusion. Instinct nudged her to block him by thinking of a brick wall. Katie shifted back and called to mind the image of dozens of bricks, solid and strong. Grayson frowned. You know how to keep me away from reading you. That's good. But it won't stop me from telling it like it is. The Dark Kingdom is not Tear. Nog. He went to the nearby stream and dipped his hands into it, drinking. Water dripped down his face as he turned to her. Wolf Haven isn't heaven for Lupins. It's a sanctuary away from dark fae and others, but it can be hell if you wander into the wrong places. Hell for females especially. We run on pure instinct, and males can scent a female coming into her heat for miles away. You're ripe for the taking, Katie. A chill raced down her spine. There are no packs? Grayson frowned. Yes, but there are fewer females of breeding age, which is why males fight over females so viciously. A female outside her pack, or one who doesn't carry a mating mark, can be taken against her will and theirs. Little the alpha can do to save her. Don't ever stray far from me when you're outside the cottage. Cottage is warded against intruders. The idea of being raped by a strange Lupin made her ill. But Grayson's closeness was another matter. For years she'd suppressed her sexuality and her baser wolf nature, afraid of displeasing her parents or making them worry needlessly. Now the Dark Kingdom magic was working on her, making her sexually aware of Grayson and needing more than their friendship. The males just do as they please and rape the females? No wonder there are few females here. He gave her a steady look. The females here are as savage and tough as the males. They are fully aware of their powers and fight back effectively. Few males succeed at overpowering them. You're vulnerable, Katie. You're an outsider. For now. She didn't know what to make of this. For now? Did he want her to remain here with him? And what about you, Grayson? You've lived here before. Are you as savage as the other males? He rubbed a hand over the stubble on his chin. I never take a female against her will, but I'm no gentleman. When I ride a female, it's a rough ride. As the beast inside me. Get it? The idea intrigued her. An image sprang to mind, Grayson pinning her to the bed as she struggled, and then pounding into her as he made her cry out in pleasure, and the headboard banged against the wall. Headboard banging sex sounded real good right now. He shuddered as she lightly touched his wrist, feeling the hairs upon his skin. Grayson stepped back. Let's get back to the cottage, get you settled. For the night. Alone. She thrust out her breasts, her nipples hard as pearls. Or will you? Keep me company, all night. You don't know what you're asking, he said softly, a dangerous look on his face. Don't tempt me, Katie. I have only so much restraint. Deep inside, she knew she should be asking questions, demanding answers. She knew this place somehow, this dark world with all its mysteries. Yet the hot desire building inside her pushed aside those nagging questions, making her forget all else but her female need. Don't you want me? I want you, Grayson. And I'm not afraid of what you can give me, however much it is. Disappointment filled her. She wanted her first time with Grayson here, in this wild and wicked place where magic ruled all. I want you. And I will have you, and when I do, it will not be all hearts and flowers. But first I want to be sure you're safe from what the hell ever is after you. And then, his gaze gleamed, and then you'll find out exactly what I plan. He wanted her badly, enough to throw caution to the wind, sweep her into his arms and satisfy his raging lust, throw her down on the bed and not let her go, until they lay exhausted and spent from making love. Grayson took a deep breath and went outside the cottage, leaving Katie inside to sleep. His wolf howled and snarled to remain with the woman to satisfy the beast's urgent need to mate. His skin half had trouble controlling the wolf, much like a human struggling to leash a wild beast. In the skin world, it was easier to tame his savage nature. Here where the forces of dark magic swirled in seductive tendrils, rousing his own powers. Each hour became a true test of will. The only way he could quell his primitive desire for sex was to focus on Katie and his own need to protect her. Moonlight on his naked shoulders, Grayson stretched and felt the power humming in the air. He must find out who ordered her kidnapped and brought into the Dark Kingdom. Those night riders hadn't been powered on their own magic. Someone fed them strength enough to overcome the sun and become as strong during the day as they were at night. He doubted it was Gurner. The owner of the brothel and breeding den had limited interest in lupins, other than what profit they could provide for him. No, whoever wanted Katie wanted her badly enough to yank her away from the safety of her world into this one. He didn't want to leave Katie in the cottage alone, but his pack was far away, and they wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. Taking her with him after midnight, when the dark magic was at its most powerful, would be foolhardy. Other males would scent her and want her. He could fight them off, but it would be a damn hard battle, and while he was fighting, one could slip away, pin her down, and rape her as the others distracted him. Rape her and claim her, and keep her prisoner here in the Dark Kingdom. Better to leave her in the cottage with the magic he used to ward his territory. No male lupin, unless he had a death wish, would dare to violate another male's boundaries. Grayson shifted and lifted his muzzle to the full moon in the ink-dark sky and began pacing through the nearby woods. He turned his massive head, picking out the strange smells. Silver moonlight slanted through the thick firs and oaks, their leaves pale in the night, decaying leaves mixed with soft moss covered the forest floor. The air was cool, but an oppressive heaviness lingered. No sounds of life echoed around him. No owls hooting softly from overhead branches or even a small animal rustling in the undergrowth. Not like it had been earlier, when he'd sat on the porch with Katie. Bad news. It meant something nasty had recently visited, something that had taken the dark magic and embraced evil. Wolf Haven hadn't seen a truly evil lupin in many decades. The powerful scent of blood wafted on the wind, picking up the trail again. Grayson growled low in his throat. He headed east, eager to kill whatever threatened his Katie. He entered a clearing and saw the blood source. A deer, its sightless eyes staring at the moon, its throat torn out. Grayson loped closer and sniffed the carcass. Fur rose along his sleek body. Grayson scanned the area, his extraordinary senses screaming danger. He scented nothing but deer blood and the faint, sweet smell of flowers. No other animals' forms, nothing around him on the ground. But he felt something or someone watching him. Uneasy at leaving Katie alone, Grayson loped over to the nearest tree and lifted his leg, marking his territory. He growled at the air. Stay away from her. Grayson sniffed the air again, picking up a new scent. Iron and cold snow, mixed with freshly mown grass. The Belcher Pack Alpha. Perhaps the Alpha was widowed, searching for a new mate. He didn't know for. He'd been gone far too long. If the Belcher Pack Alpha had heard of Katie's origins, he could have coaxed Charles from the Mitchell Pack to kidnap Katie, bring her to him to be his new mate. Katie was young, very fertile, and would give the male many sons. Grayson had no choice now. He had to find his pack, get information. He could not protect Katie alone if a rival pack was after her. He sent a telepathic message to his best friend, Chase. What do you know about the Belcher Pack Alpha? Chase immediately answered back. Dude, you're back. Been too long. What's wrong? I need to know about the Belcher Pack Alpha. Is he widowed? Looking for a new powerful mate? Yeah, heard something about that. Why? Come quickly as you can and gather the others. Chase and the pack were hunting on the pastoral grounds where they made their home, about a half-day's travel from the cottage in the woods. You okay? Chase asked. Yeah, but hurry. I have a young vulnerable female with me. The line of communication cut off, but Grayson knew Chase would heed his request and get their alpha, Cedric, to the cottage. Angered at the idea of having to involve his pack, Grayson shifted back to skin. He snarled at the air, and in his fury released his magic. 2 bluish-white balls of pure energy sailed into the ground, creating a large crater. Trembling, he stared at his hands, knowing his magic had amplified 10 times. Since his last visit to this world, he had become much more powerful. Katie did not know what he was or who he was. What would she choose when she found out he was not a normal Lupin? Or for that matter, when she discovered exactly what she was? Chapter 10. When Grayson returned to the cottage, he didn't join her in the bedroom. Instead, he bathed in the indoor-outdoor shower. When she heard him come back inside the cottage moving about, she waited a minute. Frustrated, she crept out of bed and opened the door. Grayson was fast asleep on the sofa, the silver sword lying within reach on the nearby table. Returning to bed, Katie sighed and settled in for a restless night. There was no mystery about the effects of the Dark Kingdom on her libido. With magic powerful enough to run appliances, the kingdom had infused her body with enough Lupin hormones to make 10 normal Lupins crazed with sexual need. It cranked up her heat from simmering to volcanic. Never had she felt this blistering need for sex. Burrowing under the soft covers, she sighed and drifted into a dream filled with images of a nude Grayson, growling as he flung her onto the bed and then prepared to mate with her. When she awoke in the morning, sun streamed through the window. The beams danced on the floor, turning blue and lilac. Tiny whispers filled the air, and she realized that fairies danced in the beams outside her window. Enchanted, she climbed out of bed, stretched out a hand to touch the light, watching the fairies dance in the sunshine. Another faint memory surfaced, laughing and twirling in the sunshine when she first woke and seeing fairies giggle as they joined her. Dropping her hand, she shivered. How could she remember something so unusual as this when she'd never been here before? Troubled, she went into the shower, and then emerged in a soft towel. She gazed around the bedroom. Katie wished she had a fresh change of clothing. She could not conjure clothing by magic without shifting first. As she turned around, she was shocked to see clothing laid out on the bed. Had not been there a minute ago. She dressed in the forest green gown of silk, delighting in the slippers on her feet. It was as if the fairies had conjured the clothing for her. Katie went into the kitchen. The window over the sink was open to allow a cool breeze inside. Bare-chested, Grayson was at the counter cutting up links of sausage. She hovered in the doorway, admiring the view, the strong curve of his biceps, the trim waist and abdominal muscles, and the narrow hips. He turned and her breath fled. His chest was whoa. Dark hair covered his thick chest. Not an ounce of fat on this wolf. Grayson's intense blue gaze met hers. He handed her a plate filled with sausage. Eat. You'll need your strength for later. Later as in what? He seemed too uptight for sex. Grayson prowled the kitchen, looking out the window as if expecting someone. Katie ate in a hurry, hungrier than she realized. When she finished, he took her plate and dumped it into the sink. They're here, he told her. Looking out the window, she gasped at the sight of about 80 people milling about on Grayson's lawn out back. No warning, no sound, nothing. Her own pack was quiet, and Aiden, their alpha, was especially stealthy when it came to slipping in and out, but Aiden couldn't mask his scent. This was incredible. Silent as mist, they had arrived. They all looked different, with various stages of height and weight, yet somehow they seemed united as one large force. It was their scent, she realized. Even though their scents were all individual, a distinct fragrance of sharp cedar threaded through them like a fishing line holding many lures. Grayson pulled on a charcoal t-shirt. I have to go greet them formally. Haven't seen them in many years. This is your pack? She asked. He nodded. I called them here. It's why you refused Aiden. You have your own pack. This is where your loyalty lies. She suspected Grayson had secrets, but this was a huge one. Did he mean to stay here with her and never leave? Or would he return her to the skin world and his own ranch? This is my world, Katie, but I've been absent a long time. My alpha, Cedric, is more than 800 years old. We are free to come and go as we please. But when we are here, we belong to the pack. He took her hand. Come meet them. I asked them to come here because the one who orchestrated your kidnapping is here in Wolf Haven, darling. I'm positive of it. And I'm going to flush him out. Her heart beat faster from his touch and her own nervousness. What if they object to me? I'm an outsider. Grayson lightly squeezed her hand. They won't. And I'll be right here with you. Katie balked, sensing a greater intent with him. I'm not from your pack. Why? Won't they resent me intruding on their world? He gave her a steady look. Because you're with me and I will tell them exactly what you are to me, Katie. You're going to be my mate. Katie blinked, startled at the new possessive tone of his voice. Grayson had always been friendly but never this primitive. Oh, and do I get a say in that? Reckon you do. And then he fisted a hand in her hair and gave her no time to think, act, or even breathe before his mouth was on hers. Hot, demanding, possessive. His tongue swept into her mouth, staking a claim. This wasn't a sweet kiss or a reassuring one. It was passion and fire, a male's need firing her own sexual arousal. Katie clung to him like a life raft in a storm, weakened with desire. Her nipples saluted the inside of the soft dress and the space between her legs ached for him to fill it. Grayson slid his left hand over her breast, gently squeezing and kneading until she moaned beneath his mouth. When he released her, his eyes glittering amber with the rise of his wolf, she almost collapsed. Tell me you don't want me, he murmured. Unable to think straight, let alone speak a coherent thought, she backed off. Grayson's kiss made her female parts howl with need, and she could not deny the powerful attraction between them. Sex wasn't a luxury now, it had turned into a necessity to ease the ache of her body. But she couldn't let her own lust turn her into a mindless robot eager to spread her legs and surrender her will to this powerful male. She pressed a hand to her head, finally gathered her scrambled thoughts. There's more to being someone's mate than sex, Grayson. He slid a hand over her cheek, caressing her skin with the edge of one thumb, making her tremble with fresh need. I know, sweetheart, but for the purposes of meeting my pack, I have to state my intentions. You're young, ripe, and ready for the taking, and I won't have another male sniffing around you. There are fewer females here in the Dark Kingdom, and few in my pack. Gone was the laconic Grayson, who was amicable and friendly. This male was savage and nearly feral in his sexual need. What about Aiden? I belong to his pack. You can't take me away. Already worked it out with him. He gave me permission. Outraged, she glared at him. Maybe she was grateful for his protection, and she wanted him deep inside her. Every inch of that hardness that had pressed against her soft belly, but being mated was another matter. What makes you so certain I'll agree to this? What if I decide to march back out there without you? You can't. Too dangerous. Grayson clasped her hand. Come on. He was right. Trying to navigate through that dark forest alone gave her a sickening feeling. And that cave. For now, Katie had no choice but to follow his lead. The air outside his cabin seemed warm, but the stares of the lupins sanding quietly in the green expanse of grass in the back chilled her blood. They looked like normal lupins in skin. There were males in jeans with polo shirts, some males wearing cargo shorts and one in hunting gear. One even wore neatly pressed trousers and a blue silk shirt. The females wore long dresses of blue or green, their hair pinned up or loose. All the pack members were different, but she sensed their power like a humming electrical line. They were not normal lupins. There was something other about them, just as there was with Grayson. Grayson put a hand on her shoulder. This is Katie. She was kidnapped by Someone in her pack in the skin world and brought to Gurner's brothel. Someone in Wolf Haven organized this. I scented the Belcher pack Alpha near my cottage, and I suspect that Alpha's the one who ordered Katie's kidnapping. Stunned, she turned her head to look at him. Who is this person and why? Didn't you tell me about him? Gently, he squeezed her shoulder. I needed my pack here first to protect you, sweetheart. The Belcher pack is larger than ours and I can't protect you by myself if we face war from a rival pack. A pack war over her? She shuddered, hating the thought. Why me? I'm no one special. There are females here. Grayson's gaze became heavy-lidded. None as special as you. Murmurs rippled through the pack like wind. One Lupin detached himself from the crowd and nodded at Grayson. Welcome back, man. I'm no man, Grayson deadpanned. And then he laughed, went to the Lupin and clasped his forearm. Chase. Reckon you're pissed off because I took my time returning. Chase put a hand over his heart. You never called. I waited and waited. Grayson laughed, a deep reassuring sound. I missed you, the other Lupin said. Grayson's smile dropped. He drew her forward. Katie, this is my friend Chase. Chase gave a formal bow. Welcome to our world, Katie. He had merry brown eyes, a shock of thick, dark hair spilling down to his shoulders, and looked wild, but she liked him. A shorter male wearing cloth trousers and a leather vest pushed forward. Gray-haired with thick, dark brows set over dark eyes, he did not smile. An air of authority clung to him and something else. Instinctively she knew this was the pack alpha. Older than the others, he swept her over with a scrutinizing look. It made her skin crawl as if ants burrowed beneath it. Grayson stepped forward and hugged the male like a son greeting his father. Cedric hugged him back, but there was a coolness in his gaze when the alpha released him. About time you returned home to us. I thought you'd be home sooner after my little talk. What little talk? Katie wanted to ask, but seeing the guarded look on Grayson's face decided against it. Pack politics were delicate matters and she had no idea how things operated in this world. Grayson gave a polite nod. Cedric, this is Katie. Katie, this is our alpha. Katie tried to conceal her revulsion as Cedric took her hand. Gray-haired. Cedric was heavily muscled and looked wilder than the others, as if he'd been living a long time as Wolf. He was barefoot and the tops of his feet were hairy along with his toes. She glanced at his hands. Same with those. It was as if he'd shifted, and some parts of his body forgot what it was like to be in human skin again. Though the alpha made her want to run away, even to the dark forest, years of pack living drilled into her. Forcing a polite smile, she struggled against the need to yank away her hand. Hello. My dear Katie, Cedric crooned. He pulled her closer and smiled. Katie tried to tug her hand away, but he refused to release it. Let her go, Grayson protested. The alpha did, and then Cedric turned with whirlwind speed and raked his claws across Grayson's face. Katie cried out and rushed forward, but two other men grabbed her arms. I've been searching for her ever since Gurner informed me she escaped. Thank you for delivering her to me. Now back off. The female is mine. The alpha gave a sinister smile. Mine to fuck and breathe. Chapter 11. Katie cried out and lunged against the grip of the two males holding her fast. But they were much stronger than her. Grayson staggered backward, blood streaming down his cheeks. The alpha had just missed clawing his eyes. Oh damn, she knew it had been a bad idea to come out here. Every instinct had warned against it, but her skin side said this was Grayson's pack and she had to be polite. Katie struggled in the arms of the two men, who held her firmly. Cedric, have you lost your damn mind? Chase asked. Shut up, the alpha said, his gaze never leaving Grayson's. This doesn't concern you. Waves of sexual arousal radiated from him, along with male aggression and something else. Something so dark and tainted it suffocated her throat. Whatever had happened to Cedric was not normal or natural. Cedric, let her go, Grayson said quietly. How he could be so calm with the bloody claw marks gouging his skin? Never, the alpha snapped. She's mine. Grayson fisted his hands. You're the one who had her kidnapped. It was easy enough to convince that weak fool Charles to bring her to the portal in exchange for gold. All I needed was a pawn, and hanging out in the skin world, as disgusting as it was, gave me the opportunity to find an insider to where she lived. Cedric, man, what the hell are you talking about? Another Lupin yelled. Shut up, the alpha said. Katie is one of us and she belongs to me. No, I don't. She struggled in the grip of the two males holding her fast. Oh, you do, my dear. Why else did I allow Grayson to take you to the skin world? I was waiting for the moment when you turn 21 and come into your full power. I have planned this for a long time, Katie. I'm certain you will enjoy being with me. I am a most exquisite lover. I've had many years of practice. Her heart beat faster but not with arousal. Pure terror arrowed through her. She'd been kidnapped and brought to a brothel in the Dark Kingdom to satisfy the lust of this thing. Not a Lupin. Not an ordinary one. But a Lupin who had lived more than 800 years and was corrupt from the inside out. You won't have her, Grayson snapped. Cedric let his talons lengthen. I am the alpha. She belongs here with me, the strongest male, to take her and breed with her. Katie bristled. I am not a stake. I make my own choices. In the Dark Kingdom, females know their place, the alpha said calmly. Blood still streaming down his injured cheek, Grayson looked at her. In the Dark Kingdom, females have their own defenses to fight off males who would hold them against their will. Katie is still innocent of her powers. She received no training. She doesn't yet know of her powers. Powers? Katie's instincts tingled. This place which seemed so familiar. The feeling of isolation back at the Mitchell Ranch, as if she never would quite belong. Did Grayson mean she was from this world? Her gaze swept around the rest of the pack. They looked uncertain, but the alpha ruled them and they would not interfere. You chose the skin world, Grayson. Your life is there. You are no longer pack, Cedric sneered. And you are no alpha who protects females. Grayson gestured to the pack. You forgot the #1 rule of pack. Never put your own needs before the others. If you need a mate that badly, why would you steal one? She's mine by right. I am alpha, Cedric yelled. Until one female stepped forward. With dark red curls spilling down her back. And deep green eyes, she looked regal and commanding. And mighty angry. Cedric, pack is pack. Grayson will always be one of us until he leaves. Now, either fight him for the leadership of our pack or stop blathering. You're beginning to bore me. Growling, the alpha whirled and stared at the outspoken female. How dare you? On the sidelines, Chase grinned. Oh damn, Sienna, you've done it now. Challenged the alpha. But the redhead refused to lower her gaze and only rolled her eyes. Katie hoped Cedric would see reason. And then the alpha stepped forward and hit Sienna hard. Gasping, she fell backward. Chase barked out a curse and rushed forward to help her up. He gently touched her cheek and then glared at Cedric. You've taken this too far, old man. If you don't fight Grayson, damn it, I'll take you down myself, Chase threatened. Show some respect. I am your alpha. No one tells me what to do, Cedric snarled. All the while Grayson was inside her head. Use your powers, Katie, darling. There has to be a reason why he went to all this trouble to kidnap you. It isn't for sex or breeding. Something more. He could choose any female among his pack. Drill into his thoughts, see his true purpose. I can't, not without him detecting me. But he doesn't know you. Closing her eyes, she envisioned Cedric, the thick silver hair spilling down to his collar, the thin nose and the upper lip lifted in a sneer. Katie took a deep breath, and as if she dove into a deep pool, plunged into his mind. She found his thoughts blinking on and off like a bright purple neon sign in the night. Katie slipped through them as if they were pages in a magazine, and what she found shocked her. She's young, not tainted with the darkness yet. Fresh. More energy, more power than my last mate. I'm not going to die. Get a baby on her, fuck her. Then drain her. I'll be younger, last 100 more years with her energy and the babies. She is purebred, good fight to the death. Cedric didn't want her out of pure lust, to make a baby with her and secure his line as most male Lupins desired. He wanted to mate with her, breed with her and then kill them both, Katie and her unborn child, so Cedric could siphon away all their energy, leaving her a dried husk of a Lupin, her baby dead. And he planned to fight Grayson to the death to achieve his goal. Instantly she telegraphed this information to Grayson. His last mate didn't die from natural causes. Right after he became alpha of this pack, he started to lose energy and die. So he killed her, siphoned out her energy so he could live longer, stay younger and remain in charge of the pack. I have some powerful magic he wants. He wants to drain me of life. Me and the child he plans to make with me. Like hell he will. Reckon I'll have to fight him for you. No. I must, sweetheart. Don't fret. Knew it would come to this. Grayson knew when he returned to Wolf Haven, he took a huge gamble. He'd been gone too long busy living in the skin world. But in all the years of his absence, he never thought his alpha would turn mad. Stinging pain from the lacerations didn't hurt half as much as Cedric's. Betrayal. The alpha had taken him in when Grayson's parents were killed, raised him, taught him all a dark Lupin needed to know to survive. And now Grayson faced the task of killing the very male he'd held in high esteem above all others. Or dying at Cedric's hand. There remained only one choice. No backing away now. He had to make a stand. For what was right, what he knew in his heart he must do no matter how difficult. The slick, coppery scent of blood filled his nostrils. His blood and perhaps his death. But he must do this to save Katie because no one taught her how to use her enormous powers to protect herself. She deserved a chance at life. With Cedric she would surely die. Grayson wiped the blood off his cheek. I'll fight for her, Cedric. To the death. For the first time, the silver-haired Lupin looked uncertain. Before Grayson could utter another word, before Cedric gave the official acknowledgement of the battle, the alpha struck him. Long talons cut into Grayson's chest. He gasped from the pain. Dark light pulsed around the alpha, not the strong bluish-white light of each dark Lupin in this world, but a more sinister power, as if Cedric could no longer summon anything good. He stretched out his claws. Yellow venom dripped from the tips. A shit. Poison. This more than anything else confirmed Grayson's suspicions. His alpha and foster father had embraced evil in return for power. He felt the poison seeping through his bloodstream, slowing him down. As Grayson started to move away from the deadly venom-tipped claws, Cedric whirled and slashed out. The move cut Grayson across the throat. Blood spurted. And he gasped with the pain and shock as Katie screamed. Groaning, Grayson clapped a hand over his bleeding throat, trying to stem the flow, knowing he could die if he didn't call upon his healing powers. He'd been gone from Wolf Haven far too long. He either could use his inner light to destroy the alpha and save Katie, or save his own hide. Katie came first. She always had. Summoning all his magic, he forced his powers to surge and threw 2 energy balls at the Lupins holding Katie. Shrieking, they dissolved into puddles of dark goo. Grayson lifted a trembling hand to the stunned Katie. Run, darling, he called out hoarsely. Go inside the cottage. That ol' bastard can't get to you there. He turned to Chase. Teach her, buddy. Teach her to use her magic and kill Cedric. He's going to kill her just like he did to Edith. He doesn't want a mate, he wants to live forever and siphon out all Katie's energy until she drops dead. Shocked gasps rippled through the pack, but he was too weak to care. Grayson collapsed on the ground. He tried to call upon his magic to heal. No use. Poison already started seeping through his veins, destroying cells, killing his magic. Grayson struggled for breath, knowing the inevitable truth. He was going to die. This could not be happening. Not Grayson, her friend, the male who risked all to come here and bring her back from the darkness. He was her light, her love. She loved him. Grayson shifted into wolf and struggled to stand on all fours. Lupins healed faster in wolf form, but she didn't know if that applied to this world. Cedric laughed. You think shifting will save your life? You're dead. Use your magic, Katie. Your powers, and free yourself. You have the powers of light and darkness inside you. You are a child of this world. Do it. She felt his light dying, winking out like a sputtering candle. You've got to. Hang on. Grayson, please. Sorry, sweetheart. I'm trying, but his claws are poisoned. As long as you're safe, I can die in peace. Screw that. You are so not dying. Pure instinct drove her, fueling her with strength. Calmness settled over her. She remained quiet, despite the blood gushing from Grayson's throat. Power gathered within, such power she wanted to burst with it. Katie centered herself, focusing on the calm. She was a tsunami collecting energy in her wake, a destructive force ready to unleash a terrible power. The magic pushed to the surface with inexorable force, and kept rising and kept coming until she knew the exact moment to release it. Focused and centered, she ran to Grayson and knelt before the magnificent wolf. Katie put her arms around his neck, stroking the blood-soaked fur where the alpha's talons had gouged skin. Light shimmered around her. An ethereal bluish-white light that warmed her but did not burn. She pushed all her magic to the surface and centered her powers in her hands, willing them to heal Grayson's terrible wound. Others rushed forward to pull her back, but were forced away from the light shimmering around her. Katie focused all her attention on Grayson, healing him, watching the deep gouges in his throat slowly close, feeling the poison turn muted and ineffective. She felt him inside her mind, stronger now, forceful. Thank you. That's my girl. Now step back, stay safe. What are you going to do? He's going down. Right now. Then Grayson spoke again, but not to hurt. Chase, buddy. Create a diversion. The other male raced forward, danced before Cedric, shadowboxing. You bastard. So you think you can take whatever you want whenever you want? Ignore us and what we need. Cedric lunged forward to attack, but Chase darted away. Save your strength. Old man. Your days in this pack are done. I am not a man, Cedric snapped. Oh yeah? Could have fooled me. I saw that trunk filled with Viagra so you could get it up with the ladies. Chase winked at a few watching females. The diversion worked, for Chase's distraction gave Grayson time to regain his strength. When Cedric turned back, Grayson had shifted back to skin. But as the alpha charged, Grayson did not attack. Instead, a shimmering purple light glowed on his opened palms, bright as the sun. Katie could barely look at it. Cedric flipped out his hands, but only two small globes of grayish power hovered above his palms. The pack murmured as the twin globes flickered and then winked out. For a moment, Katie almost felt sorry for him. The alpha looked at Katie, his expression anguished. My power is waning. Please help me. Help him when he nearly killed Grayson and had her kidnapped, wanted to kill her. Katie backed away. Your time here in the Dark Kingdom is over, Cedric. I'm sorry, Grayson told him. Then he flung out his hands, releasing his light. It poured over Cedric as he howled and screamed. Katie shuddered, but did not look away. Grayson did this for her, to protect her, and keep her from that lunatic whose mind had aged into madness. They watched the alpha dissolve into a puddle of bones and blood, and then the earth siphoned it away until there was nothing. Silence fell over the pack. Cedric had liquefied before their eyes, and yet she sensed no anger or fear, just sadness and resignation. Sienna knelt down, touched the earth where Cedric had once stood. Sleep in serenity, dear Alpha, she murmured, and then the others did the same one by one. Grayson was the last to do so. When he arose, dusting off his hands, the rest of the pack bowed their heads. Welcome back, Alpha, Chase murmured. Dismay filled her, but she knew what had happened. It worked the same here as the skin world. Grayson was now their new pack leader. An alpha's duty was to his pack. Aiden had demonstrated this time and again. But what did that mean for her? Did he plan to make her his mate and keep her here?